You are sovereign in the chaos, in the confusion, and you choose to enter our confusion and our chaos to show us your love, that we would know that you are always with us. God, thank you for being so good. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to meet together, and just for the wonderful church family we have here. Please bless Pastor Ron as he speaks today. May his words be your words, God. And and open our hearts up to what you have to say to us, because this world needs your love and it needs your light, and we are so privileged to be your ambassadors. We love you, Jesus. Amen.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to Summit Northwest Ministries. Wow, there are a lot of people here today.
There's way more than when we started, huh?
I love this.
Way more.
Yeah,
Good job.
it's a good day.
And welcome to you all. There's a bunch of you we know and a few we don't, so we want to, especially those of you that don't know that this is Rebecca and that I'm Terry.
Yes,
We are.
I know. I forget. We probably have visitors, so
We do.
yeah. So welcome.
What's up?
We love to talk about offering.
Or money, at least.
Yes. So offering is still the same as it has been in previous weeks. We have 4 different ways of giving.
Adventist giving,
Adventist giving. What's the next one?
postal mail,
Snail mail.
summitnorthwest.org.
And if you would like to give today while you are here, there are 2 boxes in the back, and there's 2 boxes by the drinking fountain out there that you can slip an envelope in and give us money that way.
Yeah, just a little note for those of you that do come here regularly. I was at a finance meeting this week, and it's actually looking quite good. Thank you
Yeah.
for continuing to support. We know the whole quarantine weirdness has been weird, but we're in decent shape for this time of year. So thank you. Good job.
Yeah.
What else is up? Oh,
Summer schedule.
yes. Which is
So-
there new? There is kind of news this week.
Yeah.
Isn't
So, still going to do our worship times of 10 and 11:15. We're sticking with that.
Yeah.
The coffee bar, which a lot of you have seen out there, is from 9:30 to 11:30.
Can we just pause and say, thank you?
Yes.
For
There was a time with
plant-based
no coffee
elixir.
bar, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
coffee. I'm talking about coffee.
But starting next week,
New things are happening.
new things
Yeah.
are happening. Because today, I believe, is it today or yesterday, Idaho went into stage 4?
Which is good with quarantines, bad with cancer.
Okay. Wow, that is true.
I had to think about that for a moment, but thank you for sharing.
Well, when she said stage 4, it just struck me as stage 4. That's
I
horrible.
guess it's not stage 4. You're right. It's phase 4. Phase 4?
Okay.
Oh my. Okay,
Anyway.
well, sorry, y'all. Sorry.
It allows us to have some
Sorry.
small groups next
Oh,
week.
man.
Yes, small groups resume next week. Now,
Some of them.
correct. 'Cause
We're not sure which ones, because we need to talk to small group leaders to see which ones and what time.
And I, as a small group leader of children's ministries, so that is not starting back up next week. I know there's probably like, what, seriously? But we have a plan.
We have a plan. I'm excited about children's ministry because
Yeah.
it's really tough. Very few places are opening doing children's ministry things because it's awkward. Our rooms aren't big enough for social distancing. So you guys have come up with a brilliant plan.
Yeah.
It's going
We're-
to take more energy on your part and
That's
more
okay.
involvement on your part, but it's going to be awesome. Tell us about it.
And I'm always open for volunteers of anybody who's around
And-
that weekend.
and-
Just
and-
so you know. So put it in your calendars, July 11th and August 8th. We're going to do it twice this summer. We're going to do an outdoor children's church, weather permitting, which this is Pacific Northwest, so you never quite know, but we're going to aim for it.
Yeah.
And we're going to do some fun stuff outside in the back parking lot, but we're going to set it up. It's going to be lots of fun things for the kids, a way for them to see each other, but also a little bit in probably a safer space of lots of fresh air.
So a couple different kids-specific events rather than kids-specific
Right.
groupings each week.
And then we're hoping to resume back in the fall when school starts. That's kind of our goal.
Kind of, see how schools do and then such on
Yeah.
that. But so that's great for children's ministries. No regular classes, but 2 major events this summer coming up, which is way cool. And then the other small groups.
The high school youth will be meeting at 11:15.
Okay, so
I have
during the second service.
Second service. I have not yet connected fully with all the, although I see Joe Bowen came in. Thank you, Joe. For the middle school groupings, not sure when we may meet. Joe will tell you more. Everybody asked Joe afterwards, hey, when's middle school? And do we know for sure on some of the adult small
Well,
groups?
there'll be two of the adult groups meeting next week. We don't know that exactly whether it's going to be first or second service. I think it's first service. I think Jack's class, the Worldview class up here, and Mickey's class. And we're going to be taking some chairs out, so it may not be as full as it has. You might have to
First
get a
come, first
ticket for
serve.
reservation. But that's going to be first service next week. So those two will be opening. Potentially with Jack's class, we may change the location because that room got smaller with our kitchen vent and such, so we may relocate that. But we know those two classes. And as the other classes come on and are available, we'll let you know the time. So be looking for that online, Facebook. We will let you know. But
So good news, but
we have-
we don't have,
Oh, just a sec.
wait,
What-
there's more details.
women's class is meeting too? At which time? 10. So the women's class also
Good
right up
confirmation
here,
from the crowd.
top
Nice.
of the stairs at 10. So very excited about that.
Yep.
And we'll just, as we're able to open up, we'll let you know.
Stay tuned with the website and Facebook.
Yeah.
And if you don't get that at-a-glance email in your inbox every Wednesday, there is, on the homepage of the website, there's a place you can sign up for that, right? Little green box.
Subscribe to the email
Okay.
and then get it.
Jim Christensen.
Perfect.
I had to sign up for Jim, but it worked, he said. This is my day to call people. Anyway,
So
keep going.
That's why we,
there's,
we have to rethink this.
Give me a microphone.
so we have more information on the bulletin about this, but this, we'll discuss it, but if you want more information, there's more details on the bulletin.
About this or about our last event?
About this and
About
about
this.
other things.
Okay.
Yeah,
But
so Palisades is looking for a early childhood education. Lake City is looking for early childhood preschool and a bunch of teachers' age, music teacher, math teacher. So check website and such.
We're going to
for-
solve that unemployment problem all by ourselves.
Right there, right
exciting
there.
stuff.
So it's the time of year for that. So if you know somebody, check it out, ask for information.
And since we don't have a physical bulletin, they
Right.
can always go to that number.
The
Sorry,
290
The 208-274-5905.
Text bulletin
Excellent.
to that. There we go.
Okay.
Excellent. Then
Very
you can
good.
get the information there.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay. Did anyone notice the fabulous decorations as you came in?
Yes.
I did not do that, but Lisa did. So if you like those decorations, tell Lisa, she's out there. Today is our celebration for graduating people. Again, I feel horrible for people graduating. It was a rough spring semester,
Yeah.
so we want to celebrate like we always do. Here are the names. Now, rather than read them off and maybe slaughter last names, you can read them there. But we do have gifts for everybody out at the table. Everybody on the name list up here, you get a gift. Everybody else gets an ice cream bar.
Yay.
So Lisa and some of our crew will be out there, and if you see somebody that looks like they could have graduated, just say congratulations. And if you happen to know their name, then tell them particularly congratulations. And
Very cool. And I love the
Yeah.
fact that the balloons are on the ceiling.
that was hard. You know
That
how
was
hard it is to get them
Yeah,
on the
no, I
ceiling?
like-
That was, yeah, we feel
We
bad
tell
about
our
that. They were
graduates to
actually
look
taped
up.
down last night,
Yeah.
but helium, I guess, is a powerful force.
There
or
we go.
disinfectant on the table is a equally opposite powerful force. Don't know.
So congratulations, graduates. This week, some of you have asked about camp meetings. Our camp meeting, there is a virtual camp meeting. You can see the site there. If you were here in early for the after countdown clip, Rich Aguilera is going to be doing things for the kids. All there at uccsda.org/camp meeting. Lee Venden will be the main speaker. Very excited about him. His dad was very influential in my life, and so I'm excited about and listening. I will listen to what he has to say. It's good stuff. So that's happening. Camp meeting, virtual camp meeting.
So
this week.
just to confirm, that's all online.
All
Are
online.
these the places that we can go
These
to?
are the places you can go.
Okay.
Facebook /Upper Columbia, USCCSDA.org/camp meeting. You'll be able to find it.
And tune in and find the schedule on those dates.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Sounds
So
good.
that's happening there.
What else do we have?
Children's story.
Oh, excellent.
I've been
I
hearing
do.
so many good things about your children's story. Thank you
Aw.
for that.
Well, thank you.
What's the
I
book
do have
today?
fun with them.
What's the book?
Today is called The Book of Mistakes, because none of us have ever made a mistake, right?
Like talking about cancer up front?
Talking about Terry.
I'll leave now.
All righty. So to go into this book, it has few words, but lots of pictures. And I just want us to remember that sometimes the mistakes that we made can be a work in progress. I know it's kind of hard to see the pictures, but we'll try. I'm going to come stand over here. Alrighty, the book of mistakes. It started with one mistake. Making the other eye even bigger was another mistake. But the glasses, they were a good idea. There we go. The elbow and the extra long neck, mistakes. But the collar, ruffled with patterns of lace and stripes, that was a good idea. And the elbow patches, they were a good idea too. The bush was another good idea, dark and leafy so that you couldn't see through it. To the frog, cat, cow thing, another mistake. The big space between the ground and the bottom of the girl's shoes was a little bit of a mistake too. But the roller skates, those were definitely not a mistake. The second frog, cat, cow thing made a very nice rock. And the girl with the very long leg looks like she always meant to be climbing that tree. Even the ink smudges scattered across the sky look as if they could be leaves, like they'd always wanted to be lifted up and carried. And what about the girl? I'm getting behind, sorry. Lots of pictures. Do you see how with each mistake she is becoming? Do you see? Now, who she could be.
Sometimes that's just the way my sermon gets developed right there. Thank you. Good morning, church. How's everybody today? Excited, huh? I want to thank you for being here. I also want to thank those who are listening on Shine 104.9 and on our live stream, Vimeo. Interestingly, as we've opened up, we assumed that our live stream would kind of dwindle off and not many people watching there, but actually numbers have been increasing. So thank you to those who are joining our Summit family. Just excited to have more and more each week, and our Summit family is growing. Have we had beautiful weather or what? Yeah, there's been a little bit of rain, but man, it's just so gorgeous and green. It's just a typical spring for here in North Idaho, the Inland Empire, a little bit of everything, even fireworks. Does anybody else have anxious neighbors? I don't know if it's the quarantine thing or what, but this is going to be a long fireworks season, I'm telling you. Glad it's been rainy. We're in the middle of Elijah's story, Elijah the Tishbite. And it's a perfect story to cover in the middle of fireworks season, right? It also ends up being the perfect story to talk about issues of injustice and intolerance. But in addition, it's the perfect story for fireworks season. Those of you who know the story, you know that Mount Carmel in Romanian means fireworks. Okay, just seeing if any of you are still awake. Yeah, like 3 of you, like, huh? Okay, actually, Mount Carmel actually means the vineyard of God or orchard of God. As you can see from the pictures here, Mount Carmel located along the Mediterranean Sea. Of course, there's rocky things if you look at it, but in spaces and down around it. It was a very fertile area, vineyard of God, the orchard of God. It was a perfect place to have this showdown about who is really in charge of fertility and growth and good things happening. But I'm getting ahead of myself in the story. So we're going to go to, if you have your Bible apps, 1 Kings 18 is where we'll be spending all of today. Chapter 18 starts with God coming to Elijah saying, it's time to make it start rain again. It's been about 3 years or into the third year of this. And, no matter how dry it might get during the rainy season because of a drought, during the dry season, it almost never rains, or at least no significant amount at all. So we're here in the middle of the dry season. Remember, it was 3.5 years, started in the wet season to go dry, ends up in the dry season to go wet, and God says, I'm ready to make it rain. Things are so bad, Ahab calls on Obadiah, tells him that they've got to look for grass somewhere, look for a spring, find something. And as it turns out, he is doing this because he wants to make sure that his horses and his mules are being fed. Not because he's such a compassionate person, but horses and mules are a sign of prestige. If you had horses and mules, remember the king would ride in on a donkey. That was some significance back then. To have horses, that was a sign of prestige. He would have been a lot better off looking for springs and grass for his cows and his sheep, because they could at least feed people and provide wool and hides and such like that. But he is more interested in his status. He's wanting to make sure that his horses, his mules are alive. Today it would be the equivalent of the head of state shutting down all of the food production plants because there's not enough fuel for that, but making sure his stable of luxury cars was going in top running order on that. The guy seriously got his priorities all messed up. That's what we find out there. Now remember, last week we observed that this might be the reason why God let the brook of Kerith dry up. He sends Elijah there, and then the brook dries up, and we're like, why would God do that? Well, this is exactly why. Because Ahab is out looking for any stream that might be flowing, any grass, anywhere, and if the brook Kerith had kept going and Elijah had stayed there, Ahab would have found him, and that would not have been as much fun for Elijah. Because Ahab's intent on making his Ferraris, keeping them in top condition, top running order. So Obadiah is out looking for water. He's going one way. Ahab's going the other way. Obadiah comes across Elijah, and here's what we know and what we find out about Obadiah in 1 Kings 18. Now the famine was severe in Samaria, and Ahab had summoned Obadiah, his palace administrator, high official. Obadiah was a devout believer in the Lord. Verse 4, while Jezebel was killing off the Lord's prophets, Obadiah had taken 100 prophets, hidden them in 2 caves, 50 in each, supplied them with food and water. A gutsy guy, right? Hero among heroes. Bible scholars are kind of split on whether this is the Obadiah who actually wrote the book of Obadiah in the Old Testament. I'm leaning towards it's not that guy, because textual evidence seems to place the author of Obadiah about 300 years later than this. And so it wouldn't be this guy. But apparently it was a common name. The Ayah on the end relate to Yahweh. He was a good guy. He saved the lives of God's prophets. Jezebel is taking care of them. Jezebel is out to destroy Jezebel is taking care of her prophets. She's out to destroy God's prophets so that they would have less influence in the land. And this guy's brave. He goes out, he rescues them, provides for them, probably sneaking stuff out of the palace to take care of them. He's trying to change the system from within. Elijah is changing the system from without. Obadiah is working on changing the system from within. And it's obvious from Scripture, Obadiah has a lot of respect for Elijah. It's equally obvious as we read through the Scripture, Elijah doesn't have the equal amount of respect for Obadiah. It's kind of interesting. Notice how they meet. Verse 7. As Obadiah is walking along, Elijah met him. Obadiah recognized him, bowed down to the ground, and said, "Is it really you, my lord, Elijah?" Notice the deference with which he greets Elijah. My Lord Elijah. And notice how Elijah responds to him. Yes, he replied, go tell your master. Elijah's here. Tell your I know who you serve, Obadiah. Your master, Ahab, you're serving him. Tell him your master, Ahab, I'm here. And it just gets a little bit more testy. As you read through that, there's just kind of this gritching that's going on through all of there. And finally, Obadiah is just like pleading with Elijah, saying, I'm a good guy. He makes this appeal, verse 13. You can almost hear the tears in his voice. He says, haven't you heard, my Lord? What I did while Jezebel was killing the prophets of the Lord, I hid 100 of the Lord's prophets in 2 caves, 50 in each. I supplied them with food and water. Elijah, I'm telling you, I'm a good guy. Haven't you heard? Please treat me with respect. Understand who I am. Now, I also thought Elijah must have been this super gracious person. I mean, he was translated, taken up to heaven, so he's got to be like God himself, right? Must have been gracious to everybody. Not so much. Elijah's feeling sorry for himself. He's in this blue funk. This great man of God, he's just feeling for himself. And if you recall later on in the story, what is it he complained to God? He's like, I'm the only one that's left. Well, he's just met Obadiah, and Obadiah told him about 100 other prophets, and Elijah's, I'm the only one. I honestly don't know what to make of that. I probably should making some big spiritual point out of it. Thought about, I don't know what it is, other than perhaps there's hope for me. Right? Even when my attitude stinks. In some ways, I'm kind of disappointed in Elijah. And in other words, I can really relate. I mean, Elijah is one snarky son of a Tishbite. And finally, Obadiah agrees to go get Ahab, and Ahab and Elijah have their first showdown. And I love the way the Bible puts this. Verse 16, Obadiah went to meet Ahab, told him, and Ahab went to meet Elijah. And when he saw Elijah, he said to him, is that you, you troubler of Israel? Is that you, you troubler of Israel? I love that. I love the way the King James says it. Sometimes I love going back to read the King James. It just makes me smile. The language is quaint, and yet it's so precise. King James, it reads, art thou he that troubleth Israel? I just love that. Art thou he that troubleth Israel? Ahab doesn't have a clue. Right? Elijah, you're the troubler of Israel. And Elijah tells him, no, I'm not the troubler of Israel. It's you and your family who are doing this. You're promoting this horrible Baal worship. You've abandoned God's plans for his people. You're the problem. Have you noticed how you often have two different perspectives on the same event? Right? Anybody else notice that? If you've been married very long, you know that there can be two perspectives on the same event. Two opposing perspectives on the same event. Right? And husbands, the answer is always, yes, dear, exactly right. I'm kidding, of course. Sometimes it's, I'm sorry, I was wrong again. Ahab reminds me of an abusive husband in this reaction, on a serious point. He's caused all this horrible trouble for the people, injustice we can't even imagine. And when Elijah stops to confront him on the injustice, says, stop the injustice, Ahab blames Elijah for causing the problem. It's like when an abusive husband, he's beating his wife. Finally, she's had enough. She tells somebody, the authorities are involved. The guy's put in jail. Whose fault is it? Well, according to the husband, it's her fault. It's not my fault that I beat you. It's your fault that you noticed. If you hadn't noticed and hadn't told anybody, I wouldn't be in jail. It's all your fault. Right? Wouldn't be having this trouble. That's Ahab. Just because I'm promoting a religion that abuses and sacrifices women and children doesn't mean that I'm doing anything wrong. It's you, O troubler of Israel. You shouldn't have noticed. You're being intolerant. If you hadn't noticed, there wouldn't be any trouble. That's the way bullies act. And again, if you are in an abusive relationship, don't stay. There is no biblical support or mandate to stay in abusive relationship. If there's no other message to be taken from the story of Elijah, it is this: God does not tolerate injustice. He does not tolerate abuse. God never compels women to stay in an abusive relationship, no matter how many Bible texts are used by the bully's claim to stack up his argument. God doesn't compel men to stay in abusive relationships either, but let's face it, too often it's women who are caught in that type of a situation. We have to speak out. It stops. There's no place for abuse. And we'll get back to that theme again as the story continues, because it is a theme throughout the whole story. It's not over. And after pointing out that Ahab is the problem, not he, Elijah sets up the confrontation. We're in verse 19 now. Now summon the people from all over Israel to meet me on Mount Carmel. Bring the 450 prophets of Baal and 400 prophets of Asherah who eat at Jezebel's table. I don't know how long it took. It took a little while for the word to get out, because they didn't have internet and Facebook and social media and text to church, all those good things, but to get all the people together. It is interesting to note that Elijah says, bring the 450 prophets of Baal and the 400 prophets of Asherah, whom Jezebel has personally been supporting from her own table. As we get into the story, only the 450 prophets of Baal show up. The 400 prophets of Asherah are not up there on Mount Carmel. Not only do they not show up, but Jezebel doesn't show up. Instinctively, I think she knew that this wasn't going to turn out well for her. And so she protects her prophets, won't let them be there. She makes herself scarce. Not exactly sure what to do with all of that, other than I found that to be interesting. Verse 20, Ahab sent word throughout all Israel. He assembled the prophets on Mount Carmel. Elijah went before the people and said, how long will you waver between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal is God, follow him. And the people said nothing. People said nothing. Now, I don't think the issue was so much that the people of Israel were willing to completely abandon Yahweh. I don't think that's what was happening here. I think it was they didn't want to have to choose. They didn't want to have to choose. They didn't want religion to be so exclusive. They wanted to be able to hold on to the God of the Bible, Yahweh, sort of, while making room in their lives also for more newer, more tolerant deities as well, right? People back then weren't much different than people today. Elijah says, choose one or the other, and they're like, that seems narrow-minded. That's uncomfortable. That's intolerant. How can you make us make a choice? You heard that anywhere? Back then, I don't think most of Israel wanted to quit worshiping Yahweh. They wanted to worship Yahweh. I mean, it was clear that he was the God who delivered them from Egypt. He'd take care of their forefathers. He'd brought them into the established land. If there was a battle going on, you wanted Yahweh, your God, leading the battle. Obviously, he could thump on the other people better than anybody else, right? It's just that when it comes to crops and issues of fertility, what would it hurt to get a little help from, one of the other gods? Most Israelites back then felt very comfortable worshiping Yahweh and Baal and Asherah and Moloch, which recent discoveries have associated with Baal. The idea that there's one God, it's narrow-minded. It's intolerant. It's not a new idea. Fortunately, I should say, we don't have that problem today, right? Yeah. Or do we? How many of us are happy to worship and put our trust in God for peace and forgiveness, but we trust our mutual funds, our bank accounts, our financial planning to take care of us on a daily basis, right? And sure, it's good to pray and to worship Jesus, but when things really matter, when it really counts, we have other gods for that. Right? To trust God and follow His counsel regarding my spiritual life, great, let's do that. But to trust God and follow His counsel for my financial life, my work, my progress, my status, my love life, you name it. There are other gods for that. Of course, we're too sophisticated to call them other gods, but that's really what it essentially boils down to, right? Same thing. You know what I'm saying? The last thing we want to do is be intolerant. To claim that there's absolute truth is narrow-minded. What's true for you may not be true for me. Have you heard that before? And yet, what have we witnessed these last few weeks over social media, over the regular media? Apparently, there are some things that are universally truth. It is clear to everyone, or it should be clear to everyone, that we should not view people with different levels of value. It's clearly okay to be intolerant of injustice. Not only is it okay, we really shouldn't be tolerant of injustice. And we as a church, we've stayed quiet too long. We've tried to not look narrow-minded. We've tried to fit in for so long. We don't know how to say enough is enough, no more. There are some things that are just wrong. Now, I don't think that we've been called to make sure that everybody sees it our way. We're not called to enforce truth, but we have been called to proclaim truth. Let's be clear on this. The story of Elijah versus Baal is not about denominational differences. This is not like we don't like the methodology of the Methodists, so let's proclaim that our method is better than their method. This is not about we believe in free will more than the Calvinist Presbyterians, so let's have a Mount Carmel showdown with them and show them who's boss. This isn't even about, here we have a beef with Catholicism or Orthodoxism versus Protestantism. Let's be clear about this. We're not talking, Mount Carmel is not about theological differences. If we take the showdown on Mount Carmel as a basis for attacking other Christian beliefs or even attacking other religions just because they view things differently than us, we're missing the point. This isn't about philosophical or theological differences. This is about putting a stop to over 1,000 years of abuse. This isn't about doctrinal differences. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't be clear or say clear things about what we believe. I believe we should. I think it's important for us to say right things about God. I think it's important for us to proclaim right things about God. It's why we keep bringing everything back to the love story. To understand that whatever happens in the Bible is part of whatever God does. It's all part of this love story, and it has to be understood as part of the love story. We have to proclaim that. Again, one more time, God is not telling people to duel it out with people who have different views on how to live. He is saying, let's put a stop to injustice. There is absolute truth in this. And it is evident, or it should be evident to everyone. Just recently introduced to Kent Hoffman, not personally introduced, but introduced to his work and influence. He's a psychologist who lives here in Spokane, world-renowned. Those of you who have known of Circle of Security, he and his group developed that with attachment things. He says everybody has infinite worth. And when we see the infinite worth in everyone else, we begin to see it in ourselves. That's why it's so important that we recognize that Black Lives Matter. And I know some chafe at the idea of this Black Lives Matter because, well, all lives matter. Well, of course they do. But here's the beauty of it. This is how God designed us. When we realize that black lives do have infinite worth, we'll be able to understand and realize our own infinite worth better. And if we refuse to see the infinite worth of black lives, we're unable to fully understand our own infinite worth. The 99 sheep who were left in the fold, they had value. The shepherd protected them. They were in the fold. But there was that one life that was in danger, and that one life meant the most. That's that life that mattered to the shepherd at that point. It is the same today. The life that is in danger matters. It has infinite worth. And that's what the showdown on Carmel was all about. God, through Elijah, was saying, enough is enough. You cannot continue abusing women and children just so that you can be prosperous. Verse 22, Elijah said to them, I'm the only one of the Lord's prophets left. Baal has 450 prophets. Again, you notice the diss towards Obadiah right there. Still disrespecting him. Verse 23. Get 2 bulls for us. Let Baal's prophets choose one for themselves. Let them cut it into pieces, put it on wood, and not set fire to it. I will prepare the other bull and put it on the wood, but not set fire to it. Then you call on the name of your God, and I'll call on the name of the Lord. And the God who answers by fire, he's the God. And all the people who said, what you say is good. We don't recognize it, but this duel is stacked in Baal's favor. Baal was the god of thunder and lightning. It was he who brought the rains and the storms. If ever there was a god who could bring fire from heaven, it was Baal. Some carvings of Baal here. Notice what he's holding in his hands. These were known to be his lightning bolts. These are his weapons. Right? These were his weapons of choice. This was more than a fair battle. Baal and his 450 prophets. Baal, the prophet of thunder and lightning, with his lightning bolts. Of course, he could bring fire from heaven. And then there was Elijah. And you know how the story goes. The prophets of Baal do all they can. They dance, they chant, they cut themselves. That's what happens when there's no grace involved in sacrifice. It keeps gotten to get worse. They weren't about to sacrifice women and children right there in front of the man, the prophet of God. So they cut themselves to prove to Baal how serious they are, how dedicated they are. And notice what Elijah, this snarky son of a Tishbite, does. Verse 27, at noon, Elijah began to taunt them. Shout louder, he says. Surely he's a god. Perhaps he's deep in thought or busy or traveling. Maybe he's sleeping and must be awakened. And it's even worse than most Bibles will show, because the word for busy is probably best described as going to the bathroom. Really. It's almost like Elijah's return to his junior high days. Some potty humor there. It's like, is he taking a dump? Call louder. And that's exactly the reaction. People laugh. They tittered. They're like, and then finally it's Elijah's turn. He has people bring in the water, 12 large jars, covering it. Altar soaked. Elijah prays. Fire comes down from heaven. See, I told you it's a great fireworks story. And in a relatively short period of time, the rains come, appear on the horizon. Fascinating story. We've only skimmed the surface of it. And the biblical record tells us when all the people saw this, they fell prostrate and cried, the Lord, he is God. The Lord, he is God. Roll the credits. God wins. Let's stop the story right there. Right? Baal is defeated, never to appear again. If only that were the case. As we read Scripture, Baal worship shows up again and again, and justice continues to rear its ugly head, and too often it's in the name of religion. And we have to stop and ask, why? Is there something God is doing wrong? Is God really that untrustworthy, so unloving, that to follow him means that we of necessity have become narrow-minded and judgmental and cruel? Seems to be the story throughout history. Or is it perhaps that for whatever reason, going back to the Garden of Eden, humanity just doesn't trust that there is a God of love? a God who sees the infinite worth in every human being. Is that what sin has done to us? We don't trust love. We rather trust bullies. We rally around those who bully others. We vote for those who bully others because we don't trust. Some of us are afraid to show support for Black Lives Matter. I wonder if is it because we're afraid of what love will do or what it won't do? We're afraid that love isn't strong enough to love our color if we love another color? We are called to Mount Carmel, not to debate differences of theology with other groups that see things differently than this. We are called to right wrongs and to speak for justice. And even if we do it poorly, imperfectly, snarkily, like Elijah, we're still called to make that difference for others, because the only difference that matters to God is the difference that we make in other people's lives. I don't know where you're at today. Maybe you've been taken advantage of. Maybe you've been one who's been abused. I'm sorry. Please let us help you get help with that. Talk to someone. Do not stay in an abusive situation. Maybe like me, you haven't been abused, but I haven't always conducted myself in a manner that has the other person's best interest in heart. This last week, I've had to do some soul searching and asking of forgiveness and for the strength to live the kind of life that stands for justice and not just one that looks out for my way at the sake of others. I don't know where you're at, but I do know this. We're all in the middle of a love story. And in many ways, though the end of the story has been written, God is still waiting for us to finish our own chapters in this story. Yes, it is okay to be intolerant. It's the very plea that Elijah gave on Mount Carmel. Injustice stops now. My prayer is this, that injustice doesn't go on for another 1,000 years, but it ends with this generation, starting with us. Let's pray. Father in heaven, thank you for being who you are, a God who loves and is just and wants us to help stop injustice. Thank you for being that kind of God. May we live and love for you and because of you is our prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you so much. I guess not small groups. There's coffee out there. Kids, come on up. Pastor Rebecca will have a token for you, and second service will start soon. Yeah, thanks for waiting right there.
Treasure in jars of clay. So take this heart.